We're in a crawl space this morning, and what I've noticed as soon as I come in the crawl space door is that we have a sump pump that's been installed in this house. So this tells me immediately then that there's been some water issues in the past. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's obviously looks like it's been professionally mitigated, so that's not a big concern. The house feels very, very dry in here already, so I feel like this sump pump drainage system is doing a good job for this particular crawl space. But what it does tell me is there's obviously been some moisture here in the past, so it's going to heighten my awareness a little bit to make sure that I look a little more closely for termites, any powder post beetles, any sort of wood destroying insect that that needs moisture to live. And so it just puts me on a little bit more of an alert, just something that I wanted to mention as we get started on this inspection. The first thing that we start doing when we're looking for termites is we're looking for termite tunnels that may travel from the soil up the foundation wall. If there's actually a crack inside a foundation block here like this where this mortar joint is, a termite tunnel could come straight up the foundation wall, turn into this crack, get in the hollow cells of this block, and travel all the way up and get into the foundation. So what we'll be doing as we inspect this crawl space, we're going to be looking for actual visible termite tunnels and evidence of termites coming from the soil, and we'll be sounding the wood on the seal plate, the joists, and the band. We have to probe it hard with a large screwdriver because you can have the face of the wood can be very intact looking, but only once you probe it with a large screwdriver that you can determine that there's actually termite damage. If there's a lot of excessive termite damage, the screwdriver could go straight through the wood, and then of course you can also tell by the hollow sound. We look in between girders and double joists to see if there's any mud termite tunneling in these areas. So one of the things about efflorescence that you'd notice, it's a product of water that has actually come through the foundation block itself. And the salts are left inside of the concrete block as this travels through. And then this is a product of the moisture as it's reached the other side of the block, less the salt. So the thing with efflorescence too, you can have it in all different stages. If you just have just a very thin section of it, it means it's not really been occurring for a long period of time. But when you have an excessive amount like this, like it's built up like cotton, that tells you that this has occurred over an extended period of time. There's been a lot of moisture through here repetitively, and as we get closer to this area, you can sense a whole lot more moisture in this area. The air feels damper in this area, the soil feels wetter. You can see here, it creates sort of a muddy appearance here. So now we're in another area of the crawl space, and a couple of things that I notice here. You can see some rusting occurring on this ductwork. So this tells me obviously that the moisture level in the crawl space has gotten high over a period of time. Perhaps some of that condensation that we discussed with the encapsulation. And if you'll also notice here, you can see some fungal growth. As I touch this, you can see the actual fungal growth that's exposed on the exposed wood here. It's pretty clean above that with the insulation that's protected it. But this is a cause for some concern that you would want to have investigate a little closer. This fungal growth, we can't determine if it's mold or not. I mean, that only is able to be confirmed by a laboratory, but one of the services that we do is we would do a mold test. We could take a swab, turn this into a laboratory, and within 36 to 48, 72 hours, we'd have a report back and let us know if any of this is mold. Of course, mold can create some very unhealthy conditions for those that suffer with any sort of allergies, asthma, anything like that. So again, with 50% of this air that we're breathing passing through the crawl space into the house through the floor system, you'd really want to be careful that your air is as clean and as pure as possible. And this would just be an area, even though the soil is dry, there's a vapor barrier. There's a good vapor barrier on this soil. It's just, there's still, this comes from the relative humidity that we discussed earlier as it comes through the foundation vents. So it's just an area that you'd want to have you know, a little closer inspection, a little closer investigation as to what's going on specifically. So on this portion of the crawl space, we can see that at some point in time, there has been some standing water here. You can see the clean plastic here, and then you can see the standing water that is now evaporated and dried, but nonetheless, this house has had some evidence of standing water in it. So that's another area that we would just need to check a little closer and see, you know, perhaps the cause of the standing water, and see if there's anything that needs to be done to address that, to prevent that in the future. Again, they have a drainage system, a partial drainage system in this home. So obviously the water is getting evacuated and moved out of here, but you do need to inspect and check and just verify that there's no ongoing issue here with any standing water. And you can see here also, with all this mud on the plastic, there's no reason for this mud to be here unless water had actually allowed the mud to travel with it and end up on the plastic. So that's what's happened here. It's evidence of standing water in the crawl space. In fact, you can actually see a little bit of standing water here at this moment. So water should not be in the crawl space. So there needs to be a solution, need to figure out what's actually going on. This could be a perfect situation where perhaps the water came through the foundation vent, came down the wall, could have come through the foundation wall, could have risen, you know, from the ground itself. Many ways for water to enter a crawl space. Obviously you could have a plumbing pipe leak. This looks obviously more than a plumbing leak, but there would just need to be mention made of this. That way the home inspector could perhaps address a little more on his report.